Costarella.
We're here with Aurelio Costarella.
Amazing Aurelio Costarella.
So it's quite an eclectic mix. There's a lot of very strong colour.
Aurelio Costarella is a renowned Australian fashion designer. He dressed the stars and showed in New York and Paris, but along with the glamour came plenty of stress.
So I was on a very low dose of Valium, and I would take them maybe every 3 or 4 days if I hadn't been sleeping.
Aurelio has lived with anxiety for most of his life. When it spiked 4 years ago, his psychiatrist upped his dose of the family of drugs known as benzodiazepines, or benzos.
I went from 1 benzo to 2 benzos to 3 benzos and, twice daily, 3 times daily, and I didn't question it because I felt that I was being looked after. You shouldn't be on a benzodiazepine for longer than 2 to 4 weeks. Well, I was on 3 benzodiazepines for 3 to 4 years.
He's still weaning himself off them.
I wasn't told that there was a risk of dependency. Had I known that going in, I would have made very different decisions.
Last year, there were almost 6 million PBS scripts for benzodiazepines, plus an unknown number of private and hospital scripts. Benzos include Valium, Xanax, temazepam and clonazepam, and are meant to be used short-term to treat anxiety or insomnia.
I think there's strong evidence that benzodiazepine is being overprescribed in Australia, and that has major health consequences for many Australians.
About half of our clients have been prescribed by their doctor benzodiazepines for more than 5 years, and we've got a proportion, something like about 8% of our clients for more than 20 years. And in fact, the other day we had a phone call from someone who'd been prescribed benzos for 50 years.
Thank you for calling Reconnection. You're speaking with Adam.
We get around about 85 support calls a month.
Janet Shaw is the manager of Reconnection, Australia's only dedicated sleeping pill addiction service.
We know that benzodiazepines in older people are implicated in falls, in memory issues.
My mum was very active, very independent. She could do everything all by herself. You want to get lunch?
Lunch? My lunch?
Our lunch. We've got the steak and salad in the fridge from last night, remember?
No.
No, you don't remember. Okay.
Until a few months ago, 92-year-old Beryl Kinane lived in her own home. It was an independent, full life, or so her daughter Mardella Bassett thought. But after Beryl was admitted to hospital hallucinating, Mardella found out through a letter from her mother's GP that she was addicted to benzos.
He wrote that there'd been no problems of her being on long-term benzodiazepines for 20 years. I was just astounded.
In hospital, Beryl suddenly stopped taking her long-term anxiety medication.
What happens when somebody has no medication on benzos is they further hallucinate. And she now is starting to throw furniture around. Okay.
She was put onto an antipsychotic drug. Hospital notes recorded a rapid onset of dementia. Potential links between dementia and long-term benzo use are still being debated and studied. Regardless, Mardella Bassett believes her mother should never have been on them for so long.
That is so wrong when you're talking about these strong medications.
It's not just getting hooked that's the risk. When combined with other drugs like opioids or alcohol, benzodiazepines can become deadly. In fact, the Australian Bureau of Statistics says benzos are the single biggest drug type involved in overdose deaths, more than ice, heroin, fentanyl or oxycodone.
I think there's been a lot of focus on opioids and at the same time a lack of focus on the risks of benzos and drugs like that.
Trent Zimmerman chairs the House of Representatives Health Committee, whose inquiry into sleep last year heard evidence on benzo use.
It's clear that GPs need more education about the consequences of prescribing benzos, but also the other pathways for people with anxiety and insomnia. But I think there's also a case for educating consumers. Consumers need to be aware that when they're seeing their GP, going away with a script for a pill is not always the best outcome.
In terms of sleeping and anxiety, used in the right patients for a short period of time, they are very beneficial drugs and have low risk. For patients who are taking multiple drugs or using benzodiazepines over a long period of time, that's where the problems are. Do we rely on them too much as a therapeutic manoeuvre? Probably.
GP Society President Dr Harry Nespolon says over the past 5 years, doctors have become much more aware of the risks of benzo addiction and are becoming more reluctant to prescribe them.
Often it's so ingrained in the patient that it's really difficult to get them to stop taking it.
This slide is just to think about the different kinds of benzos that we've got. So most
On a Wednesday night in Bendigo, a group of GPs, pharmacists and nurses has gathered for a workshop on benzos.
Sometimes people are aware of it, but they just don't have the knowledge of how can I help this person withdraw, because the withdrawal is difficult.
It's a huge problem in Australia. It's a huge problem in rural areas and settings.
Victoria is rolling out a service so doctors can see what other prescriptions their patients are getting in real time. The Parliamentary Sleep Inquiry recommended it be expanded Australia-wide. So far, Tasmania is the only other state to have a similar scheme. After Aurelio Costarella complained about his psychiatrist, the medical watchdog AHPRA investigated. It found the doctor had done nothing wrong in prescribing so many benzos. Aurelio's been tapering his drugs for 18 months. He thinks it'll be another year before he's fully off them.
I've been through periods where I've not been able to leave the house for a week to 10 days. Sound, light, anything, it's just... I can't even explain how that feels. It's so overwhelming. They may work for some people, but not in my instance.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.